Okay, sorry about that. So just give me a second. First of all, again, thank you so much, Hannah, for coming on and doing this for us. It is so appreciated. Beyond belief, we have tremendous hakaras hatov. So Hannah Mason is a vitality coach, an author, a speaker. Through her straight talk, open heart, and addictive joy, wow, Hannah helps you clarify a vision, shift the beliefs getting in your way, and manifest your dreams. Hannah has a unique ability to turn complex ideas into easy to access tools for rapid transformation. Her varied experience in technology, education, business, and art nurtures her spirited connection with clients and students globally. She has written many books, and I will share that with you afterwards. So Hannah, I'm going to take myself off video and put myself on mute. Are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, thank you so much, Hannah. Thank you. I really appreciate it. We all appreciate it.
I actually feel so incredibly blessed. I'm like literally at the brink of tears. I've been in the United States. I live in Yerushalayim, and I've been in the United States visiting family for the past 2 months. And Baruch Hashem, we absolutely adore our families. And also our families aren't connected to Yiddishkeit. So we get, we like lose a little bit of our connection when we're here. And it's just like a difficult experience of being in Galut. And this, just the past, whatever 30 minutes that we've had together have been so deeply like shaking me on the inside and making me so looking forward to coming home and spending the rest of Elul and the Chagim in Yerushalayim, B'ezrat Hashem. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. So I wanted to share some tools that have really been transformational for me in actually being able to build tangible emunah in my life. Emunah is like one of those words that people throw around a lot, and it's not always so clear to understand what exactly it means. We can sort of intellectually understand what it means, but physiologically, what does it mean to be in a state of emunah? And that was always a question for me, like, how do I know when I'm connected? How do I know when I'm disconnected? And we sort of had a feeling for it. But over time, I've learned that there are actually very clear physiological markers that we can use to tap into whether we're actually plugged into emunah. So I wanted to share some of those tools with you, and then be able to figure out, okay, now if I know that I'm in a state of disconnection, what can I do then? So the first thing I'm going to ask everyone to do is to close your eyes and think of a time where you felt tremendously disconnected from Hashem. It was really, really obvious. You felt disconnected from Hashem, probably also disconnected from other people, from yourself. Maybe you wanted to crawl in a hole and disappear, whatever it is. Everyone has their manifestation of how that looks. And I want you to close your eyes and do a body scan. Okay, so you're going to start from the top of your head as you're in that moment where you're feeling really disconnected. I want you to notice what's happening in your body. And there's some general things that most people experience, but each person has almost like their unique fingerprint of how their body responds to disconnection. So we're going to help you figure out what's your unique fingerprint. So starting from the top of your head, I want you to just notice what happens to the muscles of your face. What happens to your head and your neck in that moment of disconnection? What do you notice? What sensations do you notice? So as you get to your eyes, you might become aware of what your vision is like in that moment of disconnection. Is it clear? Is it blurry? Do you have access to your peripheral vision, or do you notice your vision gets narrow? And as you keep going down to your shoulders, what do you notice about your posture? And you can do a body scan all the way down through your arms. What do you notice in your arms? And your chest? What is your breathing like? Your heart rate? Going down into your stomach, what do you feel? How is your digestion? Down to your hips and your legs. So just notice, what do you feel physiologically when you're in that state of disconnection? And just for the sake of saving time, I'm going to ask that you do this again when we're done with this shiur, that you take the time to write down notes so that you can remember for later, what did it feel like when I was in disconnection? And if you just quickly in your mind's eye do a body scan, you'll remember the things that came up right now. Now, I also want you to notice what emotions come up for you. Not what thoughts. A lot of times we have a tendency to say, I feel that, and you're really expressing a thought. Just notice emotions like joy, sadness, frustration, loneliness, anger. Notice what emotional sensations you're experiencing. And the way you can differentiate an emotion from a thought is an emotion lives in the body. You can feel it. And then you might also notice what behaviors you're inclined to engage in or disengage from. So now you have your unique fingerprint of what it feels like when you're disconnected. And just to kind of get out of that, because that feels kind of yucky, let's literally shake it all out. Just shake your body a little bit so you can get away from that sensation. And now I want you to close your eyes again and think of a time that you felt incredibly, very obviously connected to Hashem, and probably also to other people in the world and to yourself. And in that moment, we're going to do another body scan, starting from the top of your head, going down. Notice the muscles of your face. What happens with your vision? Is it open or more narrow? Do you have access to your peripheral vision? Is your vision more clear? Is it blurry? Going down to your neck and your shoulders, what happens to your posture and your muscles? Down to your arms and hands. And notice in your chest, what is your breathing like in this moment of connection? What happens to your heart rate? And go down to your belly. What do you notice is going on in your belly and your digestion? Then to your hips and all the way down your legs. So if you want and are able to, you can put in the chat your experience of what did disconnection feel like? What did connection feel like? Most people say that disconnection, I've done this with hundreds, if not thousands of people, disconnection has a very uniquely different fingerprint than connection. Disconnection tends to feel closed. The posture goes down. We feel tight. Our vision also closes in. Our heart rate goes up. Our breathing gets shallow. Digestion pretty much shuts down. For some people, that manifests as kind of a constipated feel. For other people, that ends up being more like diarrhea, but there isn't this ease and flow of movement. And all of those sensations are literally the sensations that our body creates as a response to stress. So when we say stress, that's also kind of one of those vague terms. We don't exactly know what it means. I'll really simplify it. When the body is believing something that isn't true, then it'll go into a state of danger. And your adrenal glands, which are sitting right on top of your kidneys, get activated and they produce a slew of hormones called stress hormones. So that's adrenaline and cortisol and a few other things. And what adrenaline and cortisol do is they get your heart rate going, which is really, really helpful. Let's say you're walking through the forest and you see a bear and you need to run from that bear. It's really, really helpful for your heart rate to be pumping fast and your breathing to get shallow so you can get moving as quickly as possible. And you might also notice that your muscles tense up under those circumstances. That's all that tension that you feel when you're in a state of disconnection. And your digestion shuts down because you might have just had a sandwich before you went walking through the forest. And digesting the sandwich is important, but in the presence of a bear, digesting the sandwich stops being important. And the body's like, you know what, I'll deal with that later. So digestion shuts down, which is okay if you're running away from a bear for 15 minutes. But if you're constantly in a state of stress, so then digestion just doesn't work so great for long periods of time. And I'm sure at least some of you have experienced that here. So The other thing that happens is our immune system shuts down, because if you compare the danger of a virus to the danger of a bear, forget it, the bear will always win out. And the body says, you know what, let me just deal with the bear for now. We'll deal with, parasitic organisms later. And when I'm done running with the bear, we can turn back our immune system. But you can see how if I'm constantly creating bears in my life through my thinking, and I'm constantly in a state of fear, then I'm going to be in trouble, because I'm going to be running away and shutting down my immune system and my digestive system a lot. Another thing that people experience is that their vision gets kind of blurry, not for everyone, but for a lot of people. And everyone experiences a narrowing of their vision in a state of disconnection. And when we narrow our vision, first of all, our thinking gets very kind of black and white, more closed-minded. We don't see all of the options available. But another really interesting thing that happens is we lose access to our peripheral vision, which you can imagine actually makes you less safe. But there's this whole other really amazing thing that happens over here. And I'm going to show you how it works. So I want you to think of a time that you were playing with a baby. And now I want you to think of a time that you ate your mother's favorite dish. And now I want you to think of a time that you saw someone you hadn't seen in a really long time. And you may or may not have noticed this, but every time I asked you to do that, your eyes went shooting out into the corners in search of those memories. When you're searching for memories, and if you didn't notice that it happened, just ask these questions to someone else. Just ask questions that require that people access memory, and they'll do this, right? Or even if I were to say to you, imagine if you lived on the moon. Even then, right, to seek future potential things, you also have to go searching in the periphery. If your eyes don't have access to your peripheral vision, then you can't be creative, and you also can't access memory, which means that solving problems becomes a lot more difficult, because memory is where you've learned a lot of things of how to solve problems. And it's also where you use your imagination to see potential outcomes and potential possibilities and opportunities that you can't see when you're in this myopic place. So those are all the things that happen when we're in a state of disconnection. When we're in a state of connection, our body tends to be open and at ease, and there's a calmness. Oftentimes the emotions that come up are actually pretty flat. Some people experience joy or giddiness or excitement, but oftentimes our emotions are pretty neutral. That doesn't mean we're numb. It just means we're in a state of calm and ease. I actually believe that when we talk about simcha, that's what that sensation is. So when I asked you for your unique thumbprint of what you felt like when you were connected, that is simcha. And we have a mitzvah. It comes up in the Tehillim that we said today multiple times. We have a mitzvah to serve Hashem b'simcha. And that can mean that, you get yourself excited and dance and sing and all of that. But oftentimes it simply means being in a state of ease and peace and openness. And the only way it's possible to be in a state of ease and openness is if we're accepting life as it is. Hashem gives us a buffet of circumstances throughout our lives. And there are certain circumstances or people or thoughts or situations where we're fighting against them. We think they're wrong, they're not okay, there's something wrong with them, they're broken, they're supposed to be some other way than the way they are now. And whenever we're believing any of those thoughts, we're going to be in a state of disconnection because we're not receiving life the way Hashem gives it to us. And so we're fighting, we're at war, and we tense up. So we have these two different states, a state of disconnection and a state of connection, and your body can let you know. So just like I asked you, what does it feel like when you're in a state of a disconnection, and you noticed what your body has, so you can do the opposite. When you notice what's going on in your body and you become more connected to your goof, then you have a really, really easy way of building more emunah, because now you know, oh, I'm not in a state of emunah right now. My body's letting me know that I'm disconnected. So you might be frustrated that your body keeps tensing up, or that your heart rate goes up, or that your posture's closing. And you might kind of want to poo-poo your body and say, oh, that doesn't matter. My body doesn't matter. But your body is a kli that Hashem gave you to let you know if you're in a state of disconnection, if you're not in a state of Emunah, or if you're in a state of connection. You are in a state of Emunah. Your body lets you know. So once in a while, you can just check in with your body. And the more you do that, the more your body is going to communicate to you. And then you don't have to check in. It's just going to be knocking on the door and saying, hey, 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 my heart is racing. My stomach's all tied up in a knot. My hands are clenching up. My shoulders are tight. Or maybe you just stop breathing. That's something that I noticed as I practiced breathing more. I noticed how often I just stopped breathing throughout the day. And so I have a really simple way of bridging that gap of how do we get from disconnection to connection. And I'm putting it in the chat so everybody can see it. I recommend that you copy and paste this and put it somewhere. If you get absolutely nothing out of our time together, other than this one statement, it will, I believe, change your life. So it's really simple. Whenever you feel any of the sensations that you felt when you were in your state of disconnection, you can ask yourself this question: what am I believing right now that's making me feel this way? What am I believing right now that's making me feel this way? Because the reality is that the vast majority of your life, you're not actually in danger. There isn't an actual bear chasing after you and wanting to bite your head off. There might be a neighbor who you're concerned about what she thinks about you. Or maybe you have a child and you're worried about his future. Or maybe you made dinner and it got burnt, right? These are things that are not actual dangers. They're simply perceived dangers in our minds. And they put us in the same physiological state of distress that the actual bear does. But we don't like the way that feels. It doesn't feel good. But the biggest thing is that it disconnects us from Hashem, which is what we want more than anything else. We just want to be connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you can ask yourself this question: what am I believing right now that's making me feel this way? And that statement is a really loaded statement. It says two things. One, the way that I'm feeling is a product of a belief. The other thing it says is that all I have to do is ask my mind what the belief is, and it will answer me. Because a lot of times the beliefs that we have that are driving our emotions and our behavior are sitting in our subconscious. But all we have to do is ask, what am I believing right now that's making me feel this way? Also embedded in the statement itself is the understanding that if I can identify the belief, then automatically the belief is out here and I'm over here. Any belief that pulls us away from Hashem can't possibly be sourced from us, because we're pure, we're Betzelem Elokim, right? We're pure neshamot of Hashem. How could we possibly create something that disconnects us from Hashem? Only the Yetzer Hara is capable of creating something that would pull us away from Hashem. And the Yetzer Hara, that's its job, right? We talk about Amalek, and Amalek being sort of the physical manifestation of the Yetzer Hara, right? This is like the Yetzer Hara nation. And we say that the gematria of Amalek is the same gematria as Safek. Safek meaning doubt. What is doubt? Doubt is not an actual physical thing in the world. It's just a thought, right? What are different doubts that you might have? I know sometimes I struggle with, I'm not enough. Hashem doesn't love me. I'm working on this project and it's not going to succeed, right? This is how doubt manifests itself, is in the world of thought. And whenever I believe those thoughts, poof, right away, my posture slumps, I shut down, I get scared, I get sad, frustrated, angry, whatever it is, right? So that is literally how the Yetzer Hara does its job. It doesn't do its job by putting you in a car accident. Chas v'shalom, right? I don't want to say that, I shouldn't have said you, right? By putting some person in a car accident, right? That's the Yetzer Hara. It doesn't do it that way. The Yetzer Hara works by putting thoughts into the minds of the person in the car and everyone who they know about what the car accident means. Maybe it means that Hashem doesn't love them. Maybe it means that that they're never protected. Maybe it means that the world is not a safe place. Maybe it means that they can never get into a car again, right? And if they put all of that meaning, they're constantly going to be experiencing disconnection. But they could choose to have a totally different story about that car accident. Maybe it means that even within the context of the dangers of the world, Hashem protected this person and they survived. Maybe it means that it was this person's time to go. Maybe it means that I might want to be more cautious when I'm driving in the future, right? It could mean so many different things. This one event can mean so many different things to us. And depending on what stories the Yetzer Hara is feeding us and what stories we choose to believe from what the Yetzer Hara is feeding us, that's going to be our life experience. So the question is, what do you do once you ask this question? What am I believing right now that's making me feel this way? And you notice some beliefs come up and you write them down. Now what do you do? So the first answer to that question is that I recommend you read my book. I'm going to put it here in the comments. I'm going to put a link to all of my books. You can access all of my books as free digital downloads. If you want to get physical copies, we have them on Amazon and on Audible. But more importantly, I'm happy to gift them to you for free. But more importantly, this one book called Hold That Thought really teaches you the process of, once you've identified a thought, what do you do with it? But very quickly, I want to teach you one simple tool you can use that will help start to dismantle the thoughts that are causing your distress. I learned this tool from a woman named Byron Katie, who's totally not Jewish, but my friends and I learned her material together in a chabura for years. And we spoke with a number of Rabbanim, and they vetted it that literally everything she says, you can find it in the works of the Baal Shem Tov, and it's all over Hasidus. It's amazing. So somehow Hashem gives even the Goyim all sorts of beautiful tools that we can use to strengthen our emunah. And this is the very simple thing. If you take a thought, you can ask yourself some simple questions. So let's say I'm believing in the moment, right? The most emunah breaking belief there is, and it's one that comes up a lot with my students and my clients, is Hashem doesn't love me. That people struggle with that all the time. Nobody wants to admit it, but people struggle with that all the time. Hashem doesn't love me. So let's say I'm believing that thought. Now, for a moment, I don't want to throw that thought on you because that's just kind of painful. But just for a moment, try it on. Close your eyes and just think of a time that you were believing that thought, that Hashem doesn't love you. And if you've never experienced that thought, Baruch Hashem, that's amazing. But if for one moment in your life you were experiencing that thought and you can remember it, so picture that. Otherwise, you can picture another belief that might have come up for you that's in this area, that maybe someone in your life doesn't love you, let's say. So while you're believing that thought and you picture yourself in that scene, you can ask yourself 4 questions. These are the 4 questions. Is it true? I'm going to write them down. Is it true? This is a very simple yes or no question, and it's really a question for the seichel, for the mind. Is it true? And, this question is for the gut, not the mind. Boom, whatever comes to you, yes or no, there's no correct answer. The second question is, can you absolutely know that it's true? Now, the difference between knowing something is true and absolutely knowing something is true is the difference between Eretz and Shemayim, right? Down here in this world, we think we know what we're talking about, right? But only Hashem can really know something absolutely. And even though I cognitively understand that, sometimes I have a belief that I hold so strongly that even then I think it's absolutely true. And so if I'm honest with myself, I'll say yes to that question. The third question you can ask yourself is, how do I react when I believe that thought? And reactions are very similar to the first exercise we did. What happens in your body? What emotions come up? What behaviors do you engage in? How do you treat other people? How do you treat yourself? What feelings do you experience in your body and in your emotional world? So when I'm believing the thought that Hashem doesn't love me, my whole body shrinks and gets really, really small. I want to crawl into a corner. I notice my shoulders get really tight, and immediately it's like somebody just sucked all the juice out of my battery. And I feel very sad and heavy and alone. And I don't want to talk to anyone. And I'm trying to think what else comes up for me. I think that's good enough. So my guess is your reaction is kind of similar, but in your own unique way. Maybe for one person, it's anger. Maybe for another person, it's sadness, or a third person, it's numbness. They just kind of shut down because they're so scared to feel anything. But in either case, this is not a place of emunah, right? When we're believing this thought, Hashem doesn't love me, besides the fact that the statement itself goes against, right, our emunah principles of Torah, just believing that thought creates a physiological experience of disconnection. And so the next question that Byron Katie asks is, how am I without the thought? How am I without it? And in that situation, I close my eyes again, I take a deep breath, and I picture myself in the exact same moment, only I allow the thought just for a minute to leave the space. Sometimes people struggle with doing this, and I share a whole bunch of exercises in my book for how you can better do that. But just try to see if you can just for a moment put that thought on hold, put it to the side. I like to bribe my thoughts. I sometimes give them money so they can go buy chocolate or ice cream, because that's the junk food that my thoughts tend to like to go for. And off they go. And then here I am back without the thought. And just notice what happens in your physiology, your breathing, your emotional world without the thought. The most important thing, the most important thing is the mapaha, is the turnaround, okay? And there are, for every single belief, multiple turnarounds. So what's a turnaround? The opposite of the original statement. I kind of like to think of this as kind of a holographic universe experience where you have this original statement, but if you keep turning it around, suddenly the sheker of the statement, the falsehood of the statement, becomes emet. So how do I do that? I take one word from the statement and I say the opposite of that one word. And in so doing, I make a whole new statement. So Hashem doesn't love me. Let's say I take the word doesn't and I change it to does. Hashem does love me. So how is that true? Why am I asking how is that true? I need to explain that. So when we're believing a thought, and I'm sure you notice this in any thought that you believe, your mind immediately starts creating all sorts of evidence for how that belief is true. You might see pictures, you might start having memories of all of these different examples. So let's say you have the thought that, I don't know, the world is going to collapse, right? So all of a sudden you'll start seeing all of these different images of things that came up in the news in the past few weeks, which could very well support this idea that the world is going to collapse. What you don't do is pay attention to any evidence to the contrary. You don't pay attention to all of the evidence of how there's a lot less world hunger than there was 50 years ago, or how there's so much more abundance and technology and people are living longer. You ignore all of that evidence because right now you're believing this thing that the world is going to collapse. And so you start stacking lots and lots of evidence. It's kind of like going into a courtroom and the prosecuting attorney is there and he's got all of this evidence. And then you look at the defense table and there's no one there, right? That's the kind of courtroom that we often run in our minds. It's a very unfair courtroom. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bring the defense attorney in and he's going to have a counter argument. Hashem does love me. But in order for that defense attorney to actually have any standing in court, he needs to bring in evidence of his own. So that's our job. And as we know, in order to really have a solid case or solid standing, we need at least 3 legs. We need a hazakah. So we're going to bring up at least 3 pieces of evidence for how it's true that Hashem loves me. Now, because this is such a beautiful statement, I want everyone to come up with at least 3 unique personal reasons why for you individually, you know Hashem loves you. And it could be anything as big as you, I don't know, you've been blessed with a beautiful family, and anything as small as when you needed nail clippers. This happened to me yesterday. I needed nail clippers and I went into my toiletry kit and I opened it and the nail clippers were there and they worked. And it's just so nice that I could know that they were reliably going to be there for me. And Hashem was taking care of me in that way so that I wouldn't, be cutting myself with jagged nails. And that sounds like such a simple example, but we come up with simple, ridiculous things on the other side too, right? So the more pieces of evidence you can stack, what you're literally doing in that moment is rewiring your brain. Because when you have a belief, your brain believes that it's its job to follow orders. Your brain is your servant. Sometimes we get confused and we think that we're the servant, but really your brain is your servant and it's believing all sorts of thoughts. And every time your brain believes a thought, it thinks it's its job to give you lots and lots of evidence for why it's true. But as soon as you present an alternative, you start to, Sarah, if you could turn off your screen, that would be great. I'm finding kind of distraction. Thank you. Okay. You start coming up with all sorts of different pieces of evidence for how this is true, and you create a new neural pathway in your brain. The more you keep supporting this new belief by the thoughts that you have and the evidence that you bring up, but more importantly, by the actions that you take, this belief will start to atrophy. It can atrophy very quickly. Sometimes it can take a little bit of time based on the behaviors you engage in and how little attention you pay to this guy. So what are some pieces of evidence for how Hashem loves you? For me, I know that getting invited to speak with this group is one piece of evidence. This has been such a beautiful morning for me. And despite the fact that I can't see any of you, I can feel it. I can feel that there's a connection between the women in this group. And it's just like, oh, like my heart feels so immensely full of love and fullness. I don't know, I can't explain it. So this is something that you can do. We did it with one word in the statement, but you can do it with all of the words in the statement. Now, in my book, Hold That Thought, I'm going to put a link here to my books. So here you go. So I have 3 books on that link, and you can just click on Hold That Thought, which will literally take you through this process. You'll see me engaging in at least 20 dialogues with different clients, taking them through the process and helping them gain more clarity and build more emunah. Now, I wrote this book not for a Jewish audience. I wrote it for a global audience. So I don't use Torah language in the book, but trust me, that's just me couching it in terms that are more accessible to a wider audience. But you're going to see that if you take yourself through this process over and over and over again, you're going to experience more meshivat nefesh, more emunah in your life, more connection. And Bezrat Hashem, that we should all just feel more connected to Hashem, more connected to each other, and continue building towards Geula, one